we've got to think more broadly. This story we've been told about America, about art, is, if not a wholesale fabrication, incredibly narrow and biased in a white male direction. The dollars that go to white male painters versus everyone else it's 98-2. It's shameful. And that's the art world. Super educated, super liberal, super progressive, super open-minded, right? Yeah.
I have a quick question. So
Sure.
your nom de plume, Chad Scott, and there's another name?
My legal name is Chad Charland, but I only use that for checks and banking accounts. Use Chad Scott for everything. Yeah.
What's the other one? What's the
Chad
real name?
Charland. Yeah.
Chad Charlotte?
Charland.
Like Chad Charlatan?
Sort of. Yeah. Back in the olden days of radio, when all the ratings were based on people's ability to remember names and write them down, Chad Scott is much more easy to recall than Chad Charland. And for the ratings book, you'd have to be able to spell that right. So that was just easier to use.
So should we leave this in the podcast, this part, or do you not want it in?
It makes no difference to me.
Okay, good. Good. That's exactly what I like. Well, I like some
book.
Yeah, you know what? So am I. I mean, it's a lot easier, right? To be an open book, I think.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, the businesses that I've been in, radio and writing, I think the whole thing is authenticity. The whole thing is sharing yourself. I love and have always loved commentary and opinion. And I think you can see and feel when someone's being phony.
Oh, yeah.
I don't use a fake name because I'm trying to hide anything. I use it because there's a very practical reason for it. But, the people who I most admire in the media and the art world for that matter, they put it all out there. I mean, they expose themselves. I think that's one of the great things about Frida Kahlo. I call her Frida TMI, too much information. You look at it and you're like, oh, really? All that. But boy, she put it out there. And, those people who can just bare themselves and their souls to the world, I have a great admiration for.
Well, I don't know if I bare my soul, but I don't really ever think about, what comes out is what comes out, right? Mm-hmm. So when I'm doing one of these podcasts, I'm just like, it's everything else goes away, honestly. Yeah. Just like, okay, I'm sitting here with my friend Chad talking, we're having a good time, it's interesting, and I'm going to share what I think, and sometimes maybe I share more than I should, but what do I care? I'm at that age, I don't really care. That's the beauty of getting to a certain age, I think.
What is that behind you, the 3-dimensional piece?
So this piece is actually for our sound, for the radio, for the studio, and it was made, by a young kid. He's a street artist. Malcolm is his name, and Malcolm he's a really interesting kid, and he painted part of it, and I painted part of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it really wasn't done for. Oh, I see a cat. Something popped its little ears up.
Yes. You will make an appearance at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah, she just did, or he did. But anyway, so it's it's really, if you're going to have something that is functional, you might as well make some art out of it, right?
Sure, absolutely.
And so Malcolm Mosley, so if you he has a Facebook, say you should do something on him. Actually, that would be a good write-up.
Okay, I'll get his contact from you.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. He lived on the streets for many years.
Oh, really?
Literally lived on the streets for many years. And he became a friend of my son, and my son, kind of helped him get off the street. And then we kind of supported him. He's really a fabulous artist. I have a bunch of his artwork in my own collection. And and he's in LA. So Malcolm, we're giving you a shout out, brother. And we'll see if we can get Chad on top of you to do an article on him. That would be interesting for sure.
Yeah. Well, there's no shortage of great stories. And that's one of the things I enjoy about the writing end of it is not only the storytelling, but the story finding. And, that there are any number of ways to find stories. And I always think that, the best is to go and look around. Well, the travel certainly has diminished with COVID. And in 2019, I was gone to some museum, festival, fair, one thing or another, a couple times a month. And with that dried up, now I'm looking elsewhere to find these great, stories of creative folks.
Well, you're finding them. You're doing some nice things for our magazine, Essential West.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I think, Western art was really my entree into the art world. I came into this very late in life. I didn't get interested in art until I turned about 40.
Yeah.
I started going out west more regularly with my wife. She and I bought a timeshare in Breckenridge and gradually started going into galleries. And the great thing for me about Western art was that no one had to explain it to me. That's a grizzly bear, that's a bison, that's a mountain range. And those are things I loved, from a very early age. Like probably everyone who's watching this, the romance of the West captured me. Born and raised in Wisconsin, but loved Native American culture, loved the cowboy stuff, loved the Clint Eastwood movies. My maternal grandparents retired to just outside of Austin, Texas, and Lake Travis. So going down there and looking through the construction sites for dinosaur bones and that sort of thing, and fossils. The whole deal of it captivated me. And again, growing up in Wisconsin, to think about the Rocky Mountains or arches or saguaros might as well have been the moon to me. I mean, it was so incredibly exotic. And I was always interested in places much more than people. And another reason I like Western art so much is for the landscapes. When I meet someone, I will almost surely forget their name, but I always ask people where they're from, and I will almost always remember that. For whatever reason, place sticks with me much more than names or personalities or ages or any of that kind of stuff does. So, I could go into these Western art galleries and see things I liked. Animals and trees and mountain ranges. And it was very approachable to me. And it didn't have that, Upper East Side, snooty, look down your nose. You've got to have an MFA to walk into here. There's, some woman all dressed in black who gives you the stink eye and you're like, am I supposed to be here or not? And from, Western art, became Impressionism, because again, landscapes, and it's beautiful. And that came into, post-Impressionism and Van Gogh and Cezanne. And then as I kept looking more and more, there was the Fauves, because I love the color. And then it was German Expressionism, because I love the color and the subject matter, and it was so wild and out there. And what I learned was that I could go in any direction. There's no bottom to the art world. There are no sides. It's so deep, it's so vast, and I liked everything. So the more and more I looked, the more and more I liked, the more and more I wanted to look, I wanted to learn. And really, I'm cast candidly through YouTube videos, going to museums, looking through the Western art magazines, documentaries on Amazon Prime, other podcasts. I just made it kind of a hobby, a point, a side hustle to self-teach as much as I could. And, that allowed me to go wherever I wanted to. There wasn't a syllabus, and I was like, well, this is lame. I could pursue what I wanted to at my own pace, and discovered that, my pace was 3 or 4 hours a day. I'd listen to podcasts about art on the way into work. I got about an hour commute on the way back. I'd get home and I'm watching YouTube videos on, Jean-Michel Basquiat and Francis Bacon and, Fritz Scholder, you name it. Whatever I found interesting, I could pursue. And I just came to this, sort of strange realization in my 40s. Like, I love this. And I want to be in this world, and I want to be a part of this. and my wife happened to be writing for Forbes.com about sports business and still does. And I had a long career, still do in the media.
Yeah, we're going to get back to that too.
Yeah,
we're going to go. We're going down that.
So I reached out and said, hey, I want to write about art and travel and stuff, and they're like, okay. And that was 3 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since, and becoming more and more involved and more in love with it. I have not gotten to a point where I don't look forward to writing my next story, or I don't look forward to finding what is new and upcoming. And I love contemporary art and old masters and just about every period. And it's been really refreshing for me personally, because what my day job is, and we will get into all of this, is not inspiring me anymore. So I sort of describe it to people as I'm having a professional midlife crisis.
I had one of those. I understand what that means.
Yeah.
Well,
I admire people like you and Seth Hopkins, who went this one way and then total left turn to get into something else. And one of the reasons I like listening to your podcast so much, and I've been listening to it faithfully 2-3 years, are all those stories of people who did find their own way, and their asymmetrical ways of getting into this. So when I'm listening, because I'm trying to make that transition myself from a job in the sports media in radio into the art world somehow, and I listen to these stories, and it's exciting for me to know that other people have done it, so it can be done.
Yeah, and sometimes successfully, not always, but sometimes they are. Well, I think those people, and I lump myself into that group, may be the most successful in that field, in the art field, when they do it, because we've burned the boats, right? The ship arrived, and we said, no, we're going this way, and we're going to see what happens, and if we don't make it, well, it's not because we didn't try. And when you really give it your all and really try with everything, and you love it, and the emotion there is always there every day, it seems kind of hard not to succeed, honestly. And success doesn't have to be money. It can be whatever. It can be getting to go to a museum and getting paid to look at art and to write about it. And you're a good writer. So, as I said in Denver, when we had breakfast, and you happened to be there, and I was too, this is your road, man. This is it. You found it.
I hope so. And I think one advantage I have coming from the outside is I don't write like an MFA. I don't write in an academic fashion. I can still obviously remember what it was like to wonder if, can I go into that gallery? Is that how this works? Do you have to buy something? So I think so many people are intimidated by the art world, and it seems unapproachable in a lot of ways on purpose, unfortunately. So what I really try to do, because I've gotten so much pleasure and so much enjoyment out of this, is share that with people and let them know that, hey, you don't have to like everything, but I guarantee you there's something out there that you're going to like. And art is not for everybody, but it can be for anybody. And I think that was something that I really didn't realize was out there for me. I remember going to the Met with a girlfriend of mine 15-20 years ago now, and I was just looking at pictures. I had no idea what any of that stuff was, why it was any better than anything else. I was just, she wanted to go, so that's fine, and we were having a good time, and she was really into it, but I was like looking at pictures. Well, now that I have a greater understanding and appreciation for it, and there have been people who've taken time to explain the work and what's going on, I have such a great appreciation for it. And I want to try and share that appreciation with other people who don't seem like they would be naturals for the art world, but they can be.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there is that exclusivity that you will see, unfortunately, in art galleries. And it's, it's not just East Coast. You'll see sometimes in West Coast and different things. I went to a Hockney show in a gallery. I won't say the gallery. Great gallery, actually. and I was interested in the Hockneys, and they wouldn't give me a price. I couldn't get a price. It was like, okay, yeah, just don't know. Because I guess I'm not on their radar or whatever. They just felt that it was impossible that I was going to walk in and buy something. They had things that were some photographs and things too that were, reachable, but, I was interested in seeing what the paintings are, but trying to get a price was,
Well, yeah, and I think that's whether it's the gallery world or the museum world, which is really more of my focus, the public institutions. As many people as there are who visit, there's way many more who don't. And museums have done a poor job, I think, of appealing to a non-artsy-fartsy audience, to any sort of racial minority, to people who, I always try and write for that visitor who may go to the zoo, the Natural History Museum, the ball game, or the art museum. So if I'm in Chicago, or I'm in Phoenix, or I'm in wherever I'm in, hey, there's this great exhibition. And if you are wondering what to do or how to spend your time, why don't you consider going to this museum to see this show, and this is why. You instead of going to see the polar bears at the zoo or going to the ball game, how about this exhibition of whoever the artist happens to be, and then try and put that into some sort of context so that person, oh wow, we're really seeing something unusual here and exceptional, and maybe I will go out of my way to see that.
So I will say, if you're going to see polar bears in Phoenix, that is pretty unusual and exceptional. It might be just as good as seeing some of the art. Polar bears are pretty amazing. The only animal on Earth that actually tracks humans. I don't know if you knew that or not, but they do. Yeah, they're the only animal that actually hunts human as prey. So yeah, stay away from those guys, except so let's get back to how this all came about, right? How a kid from Wisconsin who's into sports ends up in the way that you do now, just being completely enthralled into the art world and becoming a part of the art world, I might add. You really have already made it a mark, maybe 4 years, but I was on a podcast, or not a podcast, but a video conference this summer when you're one of the featured speakers on that video conference, with related to art. So you've obviously made an impact. So let's go back. You grew up in Wisconsin. Is that where you actually grew up?
Born and raised in Wisconsin, zero artistic background. My house didn't have artwork in it. My maternal grandparents, they had one great painting. My grandfather was a steam fitter, great with his hands. And this is Depression era, okay, in Milwaukee. He traded work with an artist, Robert Van Neumann, who is a regionally known artist in Wisconsin. He's in some collections, but he traded his work for this fabulous oil on canvas, big, for a domestic space, fishing scene. And I always think that painting somehow imprinted on my brain. It didn't mean anything at the time, but I continue to go back. It was the first real meaningful piece of art that I ever saw in person and had a connection to. But my house didn't have artwork. I didn't take art classes. I was into sports. I was an athlete. I played soccer and basketball and baseball. I didn't go to my first art museum till my 30s.
Yeah.
I can't draw a circle. I have zero. I was starting from scratch, Mark. There were some points along the way, little seeds that were planted, like that painting, that we can touch on. But I was in the sports media for since I was in college. I wanted to talk on the radio about sports, and I took a long and winding road that led me to go to college at Auburn because I love football and warm weather. And then I eventually made it to ESPN, where I produced talk shows for Tony Kornheiser and Colin Cowherd.
You're just jumping over your high school, your grandpa. I want to know about your grandfather. Did you ever talk to him about why he did that trade? I mean, that's a
No.
really wild thing to trade.
Well, he did it because the artist had no money. I mean, that was,
yeah.
Again, this is depression. You know, he had no money, so he traded service. This was, I mean, we're talking about the barter system.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's what it was.
Did it stay in the family, the piece? Is it still?
Oh, absolutely. My mom lives right there.
Yeah.
I'm in a triplex. So here in Fernandina Beach, Florida. So she lives on one end, and my wife and I live in the middle. And I see it almost every day, and it continues to blow me away. And what I realize now with the, you know, experiences I've had, it's damn good. I mean, it's like museum quality. You know, it's not going to auction for 7 figures or 6 figures or maybe even 5 figures, but it's a great painting. The brushwork, the color, it's pushing 100 years old at this point. My mom had it conserved recently. It looks fantastic. The composition is great. The whole mood, the vibe, the feeling that comes across this raw, wet fishing scene, working people. It's a great, great painting. And I think back to, you know, when I'm 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old visiting my grandparents, that painting was always, you know, above the fireplace. And I always think now, you know, that must have had obviously more of an impact on me then than I realized, because it was an image I always remember. It's a family heirloom, and I still to this day love going over there, getting up close and looking at the brushwork and how did he do.
I bet you still do that too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a great painting will do that. And, you know, it was one of these realizations too, that, you know, all the great paintings aren't in the museums, you know.
No,
they're everywhere.
Yeah, and you know, and I think it can make a difference too. I think paintings like that can do that. You know, in our little town, we had the Tower Theater, and they had big WPA murals of cow, you know, wagon trains and cows and cattle, and I still remember. I remember sitting there and thinking about those all the time, and you know, and I you know, I must have looked at them 100 times in all the movies. We only had one movie theater in our town, and I have no doubt that it affected me. And just like that painting did for you, it showed you that art is part of a home too, and that it had value because you knew the story that your grandfather traded something in the Depression for artwork. So I have no doubt that was a nugget for you.
Yeah, and it was clearly something you could recognize, like, this is not simple decor. You know, it's not a poster. I had posters in my room of, you know, Dominique Wilkins and, you know, professional wrestlers. I knew, like, this is real art. It's got a frame, and like someone did this, and there was clearly a distinction. So I'd look at that thing and like, that's special somehow in ways that I didn't fully appreciate at the time, but do now.
Yeah, and so when you graduate high school, you were interested in sports at that time, and were you interested in maybe doing radio at that time even?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a sports freak. You know, I loved everything: baseball, basketball, football, hockey, college, pro, you name it. This was right at I'm 45. I graduated high school in '93. So this is right at that like leading edge of sports talk radio in America, like the first generation of these days. They talk all about sports. What? I would skip out of high school to go sit in my car in the parking lot to listen to the stations out of Chicago on AM, which I could just barely get because I love sports, but then I realized I became fascinated with it. I've been sitting here for 45 minutes and it feels like 5. How do those guys do that? You know, how do they make this conversation, and how does this industry, obviously I'm not going to play sports, you know, I'm not going to coach or do anything like that, but I can talk, and I've got interesting things to say, I always thought, and, you know, a lot of opinions, and, you know, I can do that. I can talk about sports, and this is like an industry now. I mean, these guys are, you know, this is a job. So I went to Auburn because I loved college football most of all, and wanted to be around a big college football program. And this was before college got so expensive. So it was actually cheaper for me to go to Auburn than it would have been to go to Wisconsin-Madison. I eventually got in-state residency in Alabama, and it was like $600 a quarter, back before it went, bananas with the cost of college. I thought I could go there anymore. But studied journalism, which was heavy on writing, but there was a campus radio station as well. So as soon as I showed up, and this is a great thing about college, they can't turn you away if you're a student. So they had one sports talk show, and I did the sports talk show all 4 years I was there. I did sports updates. I wrote a little bit for the newspaper. I got involved with some guys who did high school football, but yeah, I was fascinated by radio, fascinated about talking sports. And from when I was 16, 17 years old until very recently, that's all I wanted to do for a career. And I got to do it for a long time, and I still do it. I'm the program director at the sports radio station in Jacksonville, Florida. I've been there for almost 9 years, but I've backed out of the on-air stuff. I only do that a pinch now, and pretty much run the day-to-day operations and make sure everyone is where they're supposed to be and doing what they're supposed to be doing, and handle operations and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story. Well, what did your dad do? What did your mom and dad do?
Yeah, my dad worked on the railroad, and my
great
mom
job, by the way. That's a great job. Railroad jobs are fantastic.
Yeah, both union jobs, great jobs. They worked for a living, just like everyone else in the Midwest does. And that, I again, these, experiences from childhood, you recognize their work ethic really got into me, and they made sure, my mom in particular, that, when I think in Wisconsin, once you were 14 and a half or something, you could have a job. So I got a job at the local trap shooting club, and had that, and worked at a grocery store, and worked on, as a janitor, and then a warehouse. And in college, I worked on an assembly line, and, I movie theaters, and, all these, crummy part-time jobs that kids have. I didn't like any of them, but I recognized that they instilled in me a lot of discipline, and that sort of Puritan Midwestern get up and go work ethic.
Yeah, no, those are important. I had a bunch of those too. A lot of those overlapped, and I got my first job at 8.
Oh, wow.
Working as a paper boy, and I worked that job through high school, actually. So it was, it was a good job. It was one I could get, and you learn a lot. You learn that you got to get the papers on time. That you can't miss them because they don't like it if their Sunday dish doesn't show up. And you learn a little bit about business, collecting the money from people that people don't want to pay.
Accountability, responsibility, doing what you say, all those, utter cliches, but you got to learn them somewhere. And my folks, worked, those jobs, those career their whole life. And that, one of the things that gives my mom, palpitations, she's a worrier by nature, but, she was a school teacher and retired as a school teacher, and was in the same school district for so long. Radio, I've gone into work in the morning and left at noon without a job a half dozen times, for whether it was the 9/11 when the economy tanked, 2009 when the economy tanked, things I've done, things I've said. Being fired is a part of radio. I went from Auburn to Birmingham to Oregon to Atlanta to Connecticut to Atlanta again to Jacksonville, different jobs, different times. I'd never had a job, a professional, like career job type job, longer than 4 years previous to this one I've had now for 8.5. And that's just the nature of it. And for that baby boom generation who's so used to, you work one place for 25 years and then you retire, it's hard to square that with their upbringing and realize that, that's what, Gen X and certainly younger are going to go through. They're going to go through career changes and job changes, and jobs are not for life, the way
Well,
they
a
used
lot
to
of
be.
jobs now are disappearing. And
Yes.
they can go into an area and it just won't be available anymore because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Or robots have taken it, or AI has taken it, or
Well, and, and
however
that's
it goes.
right. That's not something, that scares me. If you're a oil wildcatter or something, hey man, fossil fuels are going away. So you might want to learn how to fix a windmill instead of an oil derrick. If you worked on an assembly line in Detroit, I don't believe that, if you're a typewriter repairman or newspaper reporter, you're not guaranteed a job for life, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't, we're in a presidential election, and by the time this episode airs, we'll probably have some resolution there. But jobs. Jobs are great, but there are more important things in life than jobs. There are more important things in life than money. And I think, not to get too far afield here, we've kind of lost track of that. So, in my professional career, I always thought, this is a good job or it's not, but whether I lose this job or have this job, I can't let it define me. And there are ebbs and flows to every single economy. And unless you're one of those 9 folks in a robe on the Supreme Court, this is not a job for life. So
Yeah.
roll with the punches.
And maybe that won't be soon too. They may change that up a little
Yeah.
bit.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is, what does your mom think about your enthusiasm for art and potentially, going in this other direction? Does she,
Yeah, I think
does she get it?
excited about it. Yeah, I mean, she can recognize in me, that enthusiasm.
Yeah, I
And
got
she knows that, I've lost it for sports, and I once had it there. She's, of course, concerned about my security, and I'm not about to, just quit my job and throw myself to the art world. But she recognizes that I've got a vision here, and I've got a talent and an aptitude for it. And she wants to see me be happy more than anything else. And there's a great story, with she and I, another one of those, probably the next or the first big point in my development, in my appreciation of art. She and I love to travel, and I've got a twin brother, but he's not as big into travel as I am. So she and I, going back to when she turned 40 and I was 11 or 10, 12, she wanted to go somewhere for her 40th birthday.
I can tell where this is going right now.
My brother didn't want to go. Her and my dad were on the out. So she wanted to go to San Diego, and I went with her. And we just went by ourselves for a week. And, we stayed at that Round Holiday Inn in San Diego, which everyone is familiar with. And we went up to La Jolla, and we went to Tijuana, and we're scared out of our minds because this was, 1986. And this, little, 40-year-old woman and her 12-year-old son are here in Mexico and Tijuana, and the donkeys and the whole thing. And it's crazy, but we had the best time. So I didn't get married till very late in the game for most people in my late 30s. So we would do a lot of traveling together, and we went to Yellowstone together, and we'd go to the Keys and the Savannah and do all these things. But we went to Madrid, Spain. Okay. And she found this tour at the Prado Museum, of course. And again, I'm at this point, 30, early 31, 32, 33, again, still zero interest in art whatsoever. But we had it was a private tour with this guy who had so much passion and so much knowledge. And what he was able to do for the first time with me, against the backdrop of the world's greatest art. I mean, we're talking about Goya's black paintings and Las Meninas and Garden of Earthly Delights. I mean, the greatest paintings ever among them. Explain why they were so good and what the artist was trying to achieve and the stories behind them. And so we'd look at a portrait and say Goya's Naked Mahas, which is, there's 2 portraits. One is the woman reclining on the couch is naked. One, the woman is clothed. And, he told us, Now, this was during the Inquisition. So, you know, all these holier than thou Catholic priests, the one of the naked Maha was in their house. But the one they had to display to the public, because this was very forbidden, had all the clothes on it. And he went through the portraiture and the you know, though, in this portrait, you know, this woman's looking at this person that way, and that's supposed to represent their relationship like this. He really, to me, for the first time, tied it to history, tied it to storytelling. And for the first time, it was more than just looking at pictures. These were people, these were stories. And again, I wasn't ready to like dive in. It would be another almost 10 years before I went whole hog into the art thing. But, you know, we spent 5 hours in the Prado, and to this day, even before I was into art, it is the single greatest travel experience I've ever had. We went back the next day for another couple hours. Later that trip, we went across the street to the Reina Sofia and saw Guernica. And I was like, oh man, again, still totally obsessed with sports, but that was another seed, you know, that was planted that would sprout up in an experience I could call back on, in memories, and you know, just to be in front of those paintings and think like, wow,
Yeah.
you know, this, again, I could recognize that this was special, this was different. I'm not ready for this yet, but clearly, you know, that was an ember that was put somewhere deep in my soul that is now just, you know, raging throughout my body.
Yeah, art can do that. You know, a single painting can change your trajectory. Mark Maggiore told me on a podcast we did a couple of days ago that, you know, a Jim Reynolds painting was the light, you know, that said, that's it. That's what I'm going to do is Western art, you know? So the Prado was one of those things that, you know, it was making its mark. You may not have really recognized your early.
I did, you know, and there were, you know, she and I went to the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem and looked at this just incredible Chinese, you know, like scrimshaw and ivory carvings. Like, oh my God. You know, so, and the Booth Museum, I lived in Atlanta a couple of times, and before I was into art, I was into Western stuff. And I was like, I'll go up there, and you know, I love traveling around, I love getting out, I love road trips and seeing places and going. And there's a lot of Native American history there, so I made a road trip up there, and I went to the Booth a couple of times, and would always enjoy, you know, again, the sculptures and the cowboy stuff and the Remington stuff, and you know, there was enough about it that every time I went and did one of these things, something about it encouraged me to go back. And I was like, oh, that's a good time. Oh, that's a good time. You know, I never ran into one of these, you know, snooty, snotty, you know, gallerists who like turned me off on it. Again, that painting, the Prado, all these, again, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready to go there because I still love the sports, but all of these, you know, little, you know, building blocks, we're starting to form, and when I was ready for it, again, when I was losing my passion for sports, I could fall back and like, I had a good time when I went there. Maybe we should try that again. You know, maybe we should do this other thing. Maybe we should go to this museum or try that. And it was incredibly slow, but every experience was encouraging me to try the next one.
Yeah, let me ask you about that passion for, because you clearly have passion for art, and you clearly had it for sports at one time too. So let's talk about that a little bit. So when you graduate from Auburn, you start your job, and you're going to be, your goal or your hope is to be an announcer at that point?
Yeah, I am on the radio. I am working at the alternative radio station in the little, you know, college town of Auburn, Alabama. I'm doing sports updates in the morning. I'm sitting in on the morning show. It's a morning talk show, and we're just, oh, what'd you do last night? Oh, I went out and then seeing this girl, and here's a funny story. It was like morning radio, and then I did play-by-play for football, basketball, and baseball. For
Can I hear that? I'd love to hear a play-by-play.
Oh, yeah, let's see.
Hard without seeing it, but let's
right. Mark Sublette at the plate. Mark is a graduate of the Naval Academy, and he is batting .227 on the season. So he's struggling, but it's early, and I'm sure he'll get out of his funk. Takes ball one inside, and it's. But yeah, so
270 is good, by the way, and I won't get out of that funk. That's a funk. I'm really liking it.
So I did play-by-play, and I produced spots and voice spots and set up remotes and was a disc jockey and did those kind of things. So fortunately, right out of college, I had a job. And again, it wasn't a high-paying job, but again, it was 1997. My rent in a one-bedroom apartment in Auburn was $250. So the $13,000 I was making was plenty. And from there, I just hustled and sent out a ton of applications and resumes and tapes, and got a job as a producer in Birmingham, and then kind of found my way more as a producer than on the air. And I never was able to be on the air full time every day the way I wanted to be. And when I finally had opportunities for that here more recently, my dream had changed. I had that dream for 20 years, and then it changed, and that wasn't my dream anymore.
Did you get that job offer? Did you get that job offer that you always wanted, like an ESPN kind of a deal?
Well, I sort of, as the program director at this station in Jacksonville, could give it to myself.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
For lack of a better way to put it. And we had some shake up, and I certainly could have done that, but by the time it availed itself, I was going the other way and didn't want to make a commitment. Again, I remember throughout my entire career, I would drive anywhere, do anything, work for free because I loved it so much.
Right.
Because this is what I wanted to do. And
I get it.
When I lost that, I was like, I don't really want to make that commitment to do this every day. I will fulfill the responsibilities of my job, but I'm not going to then come back and do a talk show from 7 to 9 just because I love it so much. I fell in love with something else, and that was art.
And what was that aha moment? Well, if there was, and maybe there wasn't, but
there really wasn't. It was this gradual progression. Again, it was really the combination of my interest in sports going down and looking to fill that with something else. But it really was starting more to go out west. My wife loves to go out and ski. I don't ski, but I love going out west and looking at the animals and just hanging out, doing whatever. And we'd go into the galleries more and more. And I suppose if there was a moment or a time in Breckenridge, Colorado, there was a gallery, and Jim Tillich was the owner. Gretchen Green was the gallerist. It was heavy on Russian Impressionism. Jim Tillich has great stories, and this is sort of his deal. When the Iron Curtain was falling, he went to Russia and he found the artists who, under the socialist system, were producing, one painting a month. Well, an artist is not, they'll give one painting a month to the state, but it's not like the rest of the month they're just gonna be like, no, they'll just wait till the first of the month. They were producing all this work, but there was no market for it. So this stuff was, these amazingly talented, rigorously trained painters had all these paintings stacked up in the basement. So he went there to get that work out, essentially, and created this network of people who could send him to the next guy and the next guy. And he tells great stories about trying to get that stuff through customs, and there would always be a few less coming out of customs than had gone into customs. And this is the fall of the Soviet. This is the Wild West, essentially, in Eastern Europe. So he brought all this great Russian Impressionism out of there. Museum quality. This stuff is phenomenal. And they had it in this gallery. So you're going through Breckenridge, Colorado, and you see all of the typical, the landscape stuff and the grizzly bears and the moose, and then you come across, like, mural sized, enormous. And again, you don't have to have any sort of a trained eye whatsoever to be like, what is that?
Yeah,
You know, it's like
beautiful.
going to Jared versus, you know, seeing the, you know, the Hope Diamond. You're like,
Yeah.
well, this is different than what that is, clearly. And being curious, and again, at this time I'm 40, so I don't have any vanity about asking people what may be stupid questions, like, what in the world is that thing? And so this woman, Gretchen Green, the gallerist, she spent so much time with me and my wife explaining these paintings and explaining these stories and telling us why these were so special and why these were so remarkable. They had some great Western material in there as well from a painter, Chance Hayes, and just outstanding work. And they eventually closed that gallery, moved to just outside of Vail. And on subsequent trips, this place was more like a storage facility. They didn't have a retail location. They just sold to existing clients. And Mark, I'd go and we'd be in there 6-7 hours. And she would take that much time with us and, you know, let me dig through the racks and look at the stuff on the floor. Cause the stuff is everywhere because they can't possibly hang it all. And she'd look, now look, this is why this is so good. And these Russian artists, you can tell how much they respect the land. Look at the way he painted the soil and look at this and that. So she really took so much time with me and explained everything to me at a very beginner level. You know, the difference between, you know, decorative art and real art. And I'd look at something and she's like, yeah, it's a little decorative, you know, and to explain and really care enough about me as a customer. We bought a few things and love them to this day. But, you know, I was not paying her mortgage. I was not keeping the lights on there, I can assure you. But she just took that time, and, you know, more than anyone else and any other place, that was where all these embers, whoosh, you know, she blew on them and stoked them, and from there they just took off. That Gretchen Green and Vail Fine Art Uncrated was the name of it. They went out of business recently. Jim is in his 80s and is looking to kind of, I'll say, get rid, just for the lack of a better word. He's not going to, you know, dump it off at a yard sale, but he's looking to get rid of his collection because he didn't have any kids. And it's terribly disappointed me, because that's one of the things I most looked forward to out there. I mean, just digging through all that stuff and seeing the paintings you remembered and you loved, and then seeing new things. And that was really the experience and the moments. And that would have been, 2016.
Yeah.
2015, 2016. Yeah, that recently.
Yeah, I love the fact that a gallerist can make such a huge difference in somebody. Life-changing, really. I mean,
oh, absolutely. No question. I email her to this day and I said, you changed my life.
Yeah.
You know, nothing short of that.
Yeah.
Nothing short of that.
Yeah. Now that to me is brilliant and commendable. And, you know, it's what a real gallerist does is, you know, if she's going to spend 7 hours with you, you know, and she probably knows she's not going to make a huge sale, if any, but they're doing that for a different reason. They're doing it for, you know, they see the passion, right? And they want to watch that grow. And I think any good gallerist does that. I love it when I find somebody who's, you know, young, and, you know, they don't even have to be young, just somebody who has the interest and wants to learn, and you can see it in their eyes, just like I see it in yours.
Yeah.
And, you know, they want to be that, you know, they found art, or art found them, whatever it is. And you know, you can go whole hog, and you have done just that. So, and that's in 2016. So what happens from there to now in 2020?
Yeah, well, I mean, I took that back with me, and I made it a point to learn this thing. You know, any book I could find, any YouTube video I could find, any podcast I could find, I listen. And, you know, here's where I'm starting from. Okay. Da Vinci, what year was that? And was he like who's Caravaggio and where does Goya? So I mean, I literally hand wrote on paper. I looked online and I put like a timeline in my head. Okay, so so that's what the Renaissance is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, and then what came? Well, okay, well then El Greco came. I remember seeing him in the Prado. Okay, so then Baroque. Then what is Baroque? And that's Rococo. And okay, so and I mean, I've got handwritten notes of all these artists and when they lived and what their piece, because I had zero background. I mean, when I say zero, Mark, I'm talking about zero.
No,
I didn't know if, you know, who was a contemporary of whom. You know, does Cezanne live in the 19th century or the 16th century? I mean, that's where I'm starting from. Modern art, no idea. So I just made it a point to learn all of this stuff on my own time. And fortunately, with what I did in sports, you know, I could travel a lot. My wife and I don't have kids, so we could always go to museums. We had the fortune of going to New York regularly before all of this. And so then it's like, well, while we're there, we should go to the Met again. Or we should go to, you know, MoMA, or here's a show we should go see, or there's something we should go do. And it just snowballed from there to the point where it's how I spend all of my free time. It's what I want to think about. It's what I want to write about. It's what I want to read about. It's what I want to watch. And, you know, there's no one's more zealous than a convert, right? You know, I think if I had gone this route or you know, had this passion as a teenager, I'd probably be really into sports right now and be like, art, I'm sort of over it. You know, I just think, you know, I have always.
Maybe not though.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not.
But I've always been interested in change, open to change, adaptable, had a wanderlust. And, you know, this is something that, you know, really, appealed to me, attracted to me. I mean, I could feel myself, you know, when I was at that gallery. I'd be in a museum, and the way I could tell is that's the only time when I didn't get hungry. I'm almost always hungry, but I could look at pictures for 3 hours and never think about food, and I was never hungry that entire time. That's how I knew I was totally like engaged and immersed in it. So I just sought out more and more opportunities to learn about it. And when I realized that, you know, this passion isn't going away, it's something I want to double down on. I've got this writing talent and I've got these observational skills, and, you know, maybe I can use this outsider newcomer thing to my advantage. So why don't I try writing for Forbes? And that worked out. And again, it is just continued to build and build and build, and you know, reaching out to you about Essential West, and you know, now you know, everywhere I go and everything I do, I'm trying to find, you know, those ways to get more and more into the art world, and you know, with all of the museum people and gallery people and artists and, you know, collectors who are listening, I will, you know, put my shingle out. You know, if you are interested in a writer, or you need a writer or a storyteller, you know, part-time, contract, freelance, full-time, let me know. You can find me at C Great Art on Instagram and Twitter, or email me at cgreatart@gmail.com. And, you know, I believe there is a path for me out there. You've told me that, you've reinforced that, and it means a lot coming from you. And, you know, I'm 45, so, you know, I feel like I've got a great second act in me, and the second act is going to be art.
Yeah, and to let people know, his website, cgreatart.art, is the URL, not .com. You know why it's not .com?
I couldn't get cgreatart.com.
Yeah, you know why? Do
you have it?
Yeah.
Yeah, good for you. Great minds think alike.
Yeah, but I got mine in like 1997.
Yeah, well,
that's why
it's funny. I came across that Well, my wife and I were in Breckenridge this past August. It was the first trip we took from COVID, and God, we workshopped 25 names for a website. I finally was like, okay, hey, I want a job I want a career in the arts, but
Yeah.
with COVID, the museums, it's a bloodletting. Okay. The galleries are closing. If you want to find something, you may have to create it yourself.
Yeah.
So we rebranded all of this stuff around C Grade Art, and I'm sure there are other domain names that we explored that.
I've got a bunch. I had that same brainstorm in 1998.
Sitting on as well about whether
Yeah.
it's art for travel or art writer or art this or art for everybody, something that's like accessible and public. And so fortunately we came across the .art extension, and it was available, and all the social handles were available as well.
Yeah. Yep. No, that's a good one.
That's
Obviously,
funny.
I liked it
Yeah.
in '96, along with the other 200 or 300 that I bought that
Yeah.
in Oklahoma, sitting in a room going, this is going to be the way it is, I think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's all these names. And of course, I wasn't buying anything. I should have bought any noun, bear.com. It wouldn't have mattered.
Sure.
And they were all available, right? I could have bought any of those. No, I was just completely focused on art and didn't
Yeah.
see any of the other ones. I didn't see the rest of it. And, I
Mhm.
probably guess I'd just be a collector at this point if I had a.
Yeah, well, there's good money in that.
Oh yeah,
One point that
still is.
on domains. Yeah, if you could.
Yeah, I'm still sitting on a bunch. So you also have a YouTube channel, right?
Yep, see great art again, and that was you pushed me into that one hard, and it's the right thing. Of all the even in my day job with the sports stuff, the YouTube was the one where I really whiffed. It just never occurred to me that YouTube was going to be viewed by so many people as a television network, as a destination. Again, because for me, it's for watching old music videos and wrestling matches. It never occurred to me that this was going to be where a lot of people go for their content.
Yeah.
People are going to make no distinction in the future between YouTube, ESPN, Bravo, Discovery, any of that kind of thing. I wish I'd embraced that with my day job much longer ago, and with my own personal thing. But I have now, and I again, I love doing the videos and talking, and again, being able to take people into these museums and galleries I can go to and show them the work up close, and try and share my passion for it.
Yeah, I think it's important, and people can see that and they understand it. I got on YouTube 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I was a genius or anything, but I had coders that were young and working with me on my website, revamping, said, why aren't you on YouTube? And I go, why should I be? And they go, well, number 2 search engine, you might want to consider it. And so I sat down and I just started knocking out videos.
Mm-hmm.
And, now we do, I do 2 a week.
Yeah.
So for years.
I've watched a bunch. I think, as in business and life, it's so important to be able to recognize that something is meaningful, even if you're not into it, to be able to, I don't think you can, I suppose there are people who can, but to be able to see trends and see the future and knowing, it's not for me, but it's got to be for my business, or, this is where the world is moving. Even if I'm not moving in that direction with it, I've got to acknowledge that and embrace it to some extent, or be a dinosaur. I think you've obviously been on the cutting edge for galleries with YouTube, with the podcast, with the web presence, and lo and behold, 2020, it came in really handy, didn't it? So a lot of these galleries who could see, but it's why will I ever need that? Or I don't. One thing I try and do, and I failed miserably with YouTube, is to recognize things I need to be a part of, even if they're not for me, even if I don't use them that way.
Yeah, because other people do. I mean, and those things are always changing, right? You know, AI is coming, augmented reality. We're going to be
Yeah.
working on doing some augmented reality stuff here fairly soon. You know, all those things, you have to stay on top of it. I mean, the ultimate for what you're doing is a passion of love and love of art, and to share that. I think one of the things, and I know you're hesitant of it, but I do think this is a path for you, is as an art critic. And I know you go, well, I don't have any of this, that. No, you have the most important thing. You love it, you observe it, and you can explain it. And remember, just like those people that want to feel awkward about going into an art museum or a gallery because they feel like they're going to be overwhelmed or they don't know it. Well, a lot of people would like to know about from an art critic in that same way, I think. You know, give it to me, you know, give it to me in a way I can digest it. And I don't have to know what, you know, impasta means and, you know, relined and all the different things. But, you know, why is this why should I go see this? I think that is something that really I could see you doing and being quite successful at it, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think what I do now is it's a subtle form of criticism because fortunately, again, I don't get paid much at Forbes, but the platform is great and I can write about whatever I want, whenever I want. So there's a great deal of freedom. You know, I don't have deadlines and assignments and this sort of thing. So my criticism is if you see me write about it, whether it's, you know, your Maynard Dixon show from a couple of years ago or, you know, Hank Willis Thomas at the Cincinnati Art Museum, my criticism is this matters.
Yeah, that's good though. That's
like.
okay, right?
Yeah.
I mean, people like to read nice restaurant reviews too, right?
Yeah.
You know, or you know, the guys that are on TV that go to all these little places and show, you know, the best Peruvian food in Tucson, right? And I think that and you like to travel, and you like all types of art. You're not just pigeonholed to Western. You like Western. It got you involved, but you're into every kind of art. I mean, you're throughout the deck of art. And so it seems to me that there's a place there for someone with your talents and your skill set. You have writing, and you know, you can also present it through YouTube as well.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. And you know, one of the when I started with Forbes, you know, again, my background was so minimal, but I also, and that's where I come back to Western art as well. I knew no one else was writing about Western art at Forbes. I can promise you that. So, you know, being able to write about Ed Mel or about Tony Abeta or, you know, some of the you know, the Gilcrease and TC Cannon. And, you know, when I started, I thought, you know, one thing I'm going to do, that's actually a couple things. I'm going to make this less coastal. Okay, I'm not going to be the New York, LA, you know, coastal snooty art critic. So I am going to write about St. Louis and Louisville and Kansas City and Dallas and Phoenix and Denver just as often as I write about New York and San Francisco. I'm going to write about smaller museums who have great shows, and I'm going to write and I'm going to give attention to Western art and indigenous artists. They are, to me, part of the American canon. You know, as it's funny, you know, because I learned this all myself. You know, I didn't learn the timeline of art history through school books. So to me, there's no reason that Fritz Scholder and Andy Warhol shouldn't be taught at the same time, that T.C. Cannon and Jasper Johns shouldn't be taught at the same time, that Earl Biss and Gerhard Richter shouldn't be taught at the same time, or even go all the way back if you want to look at more, you know, a lot of the native material, the baskets and the rugs that you look at, why that shouldn't be talked about in the same way of a Rodin or anyone else. That, you know, and I came into the art world and it's like, oh, these people are going to be so progressive and so forward thinking and advanced. The Metropolitan freaking Museum of Art didn't put Native American material into the American art wing until last year.
Yeah.
It was ethnographic before that. That's the Metropolitan Museum of Art. These are supposed to be the smartest, most progressive, liberal, free-thinking, open-minded people in the world. So what I learned from going to all these museums is typically the material I liked the best was the Black artist. Beaufort Delaney, Romare Bearden, Horace Pippin, was the female artist, Joan Mitchell, Lee Krasner, Mildred Thompson, was the Native American artist, Earl Biss, T.C., Kevin Red Star, and again, the Western material. Ed Mell is every bit as good as Robert Rauschenberg.
Oh yeah,
He just
I
is.
agree.
But how many people have heard of Ed Mell versus Robert Rauschenberg? And that is so representative of that art world that centered New York and white male dudes to the exclusion of all others. Yeah. I mean, if you were a female, if you were Black, if you were working in the West or the Midwest, I mean, you just didn't matter to Clem Greenberg and the New York Times and all of these, intellectuals in Greenwich. And it's a shame because you know who suffered from that? You and me and everyone else who loves art.
Yeah.
The art canon is so incredibly narrow from people who are supposed to be so incredibly open-minded. Yeah. But all we get is Van Gogh and Picasso and Warhol and Pollock, and those people are great. Okay, I'm not saying they aren't, but just outside of that very narrow focus, and this is what I found myself, because I'd go to the museums without any, I'm going cold. I don't have any background. I don't know who's supposed to be great.
Yeah.
Okay. All I have to do is look at the pictures and say, you know what? That Beaufort Delaney right there is every bit as good as anything that Willem de Kooning ever did. So how come I have no idea who that person is? Yeah. And in every single book I read, I see the name Willem de Kooning. And only half of those I see his wife, and she's just as good as he is too. And finally I got to a point where it's like, this is all garbage. I mean, there are so many great artists out here. I'll just go find them myself. And and again, I'm 40, so, I'm not like looking for answers or wanting to be told, through professors. And I can make up my own mind at this point. And that's one of the great things about coming to the art world late. I wasn't indoctrinated. I learned this all fresh by myself, without a lot of art historical guidance and, art history 101, 202, the syllabus, and we're going to do this, and this person's great. Well, where are the Black people? Where are the women? I found them right away. And one of the real awakenings that I came to early on was that this is totally incomplete. I love the Metropolitan Museum of Art, but
that's why we need you. That's why we need you. No, it is. I mean, that is why we need people like you, Chad, who have the passion, who see it and plays to a broader audience. And you're right. It's really a bi-coastal kind of thing, and really even New York centric more than anything, because, they can, people equate value with money, and a lot of things are not money related. It should be quality and emotionally driven. Yeah, I agree. I like Ed Mell's work as much as I do any other kind of art that I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of art. So, and it just takes an education, I think, of more people than just East Coast, West Coast.
Yeah. And an open mind. And it's so similar to, the social justice movement that's taking place in America, and this reckoning with this white supremacist, racist history about, we've got to think more broadly. This story we've been told about America, about art, is, if not a wholesale fabrication, incredibly narrow and biased in a white male direction. There is so much we have lost, so much great artwork, so much great artistry, so much genius, medicine, statesmen, attorneys. The human capital we've lost trying to protect this narrow idea of white male privilege in the art world, the business world, the media. It's such
presidency.
Yeah. And hopefully those walls are starting to crumble. And, that is very much what I'm trying to do in my art writing is, force images of Black people, of Indigenous people, force those stories to the extent I can in front of people to mainstream it, because it wasn't that long, and it's still, if you look at the art market, especially that super high-end art market, the dollars that go to white male painters versus everyone else it's 98-2. It's shameful. And that's the art world. Super educated, super liberal, super progressive, super open-minded, right? Not so much.
Yeah. No. Well, you know what you have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got about 40 years to get it done.
Yeah.
So
And
you haven't started too late. That's the good thing. You know?
And I love being able to find those stories. And again, for me, and the thing about coming to it late, I make discoveries every week. Mark Bradford.
Yeah. Genius. Genius.
Oh my God.
One of my favorites.
Jean Quick to See Smith. I didn't know about her until I went on a trip to the Missoula Art Museum a couple of years ago.
Fantastic.
Oh my God. Where is she in all of your museums?
She is in some Western museums.
Right, absolutely. And now over the summer, the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. acquired one of her pieces.
Yep.
The first piece of Native American art the museum has ever acquired. That is the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C. They've got one painting by one Native American.
Wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's amazing. There's your story. There's your next story.
Yeah, fortunately, a lot of people told it, but that's representative of how narrow this idea of art and American art was. Just awful. So, every single, whether it's every single week, I'm able to make a great discovery, and it's discovery in quotes. It's the same way Columbus discovered America, right? I mean, everyone knows about this. I discovered Marilyn Minter earlier this year. Like, oh my God, wow, or the Guerrilla Girls, or whatever it happens to be. Kathy Kollwitz, another great artist who's unless you're really into the art world, you're not going to be familiar with. So I love explaining that, and then I want to tell everyone about it. Like, hey,
right? You have the platform to do that.
Look at this. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's the thing. Having that platform can change views. It can change the way people see things. Just doing a podcast like this can reach people. I mean, it reached you.
Yeah.
You found it somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And
well, and again, you're doing the same thing with the folks you have on, and whenever you have an artist on that I'm not familiar with, I always Google them and look at the material, and I've been blown away so many times, and I think it's, I don't know, responsibility is not the right word, and I hesitate to call it a calling because I don't want to be that pious about it, but
well, I don't know. I think it's reasonable to say.
Whatever platform I have, or whatever ability I have to share their stories, to tell those stories, to try and in this art history canon story, take it back more over towards the middle from this enormously Western art we're talking about, not Western cowboys and spurs, but Western civilization, to get that out of that narrow European white male track and be like, because I'll look today, Mark, and the Native American painting, if I had the means to collect, that's what I'd collect. That stuff is, I think, the best on the marketplace. I look at everything. I mean, I could give you a dozen names off the top. Oh, I wish I could.
One. That's T.C. Cannon right there. And
yeah.
there.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
Almost?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He's remarkable. Shanto Begay.
Shanto, yeah, absolutely. I saw Shanto at the James Museum in St. Petersburg, where I went to recently, but so many. I was one of the folks I was telling you about who really impressed me when we had breakfast with John Nieto.
Yeah. Did you get your painting yet?
What?
Have you got your painting yet?
Not yet. I've
Okay.
seen a couple,
Yeah,
not
okay.
yet. But I will have you know, I did buy my first piece of art sight unseen off the internet. I saw a native artist, Jay Smiley, was on YouTube, and you know, not YouTube, Instagram, and
Yeah.
it just one of those things that caught me. Is like, you know, we had that conversation about
Yep.
would you ever be. I didn't think I would, but you know, I'd seen it. In Western Art Collector magazine. It was at the Fahrenheit gallery, and you know, it just so I reached out to him on Instagram, and the price was right, and it all worked out, and that's great. But yeah, I mean, the native material, and again, that is something that was always in me at a subconscious level, even in grade school. I remember learning about native cultures and really being fascinated, and fascinated isn't even the right word. Indigenous culture has a worldview much more similar to mine than the, you know, capitalist Western culture. You know, their thoughts about family bonds and spirituality and individualism within, you know, a collective society always intrigued me, and I could relate to it much more than this. Let's go to church and make a bunch of money, and whoever we screw along the way, they had their shot.
And then you have all the Native American art that we don't know who made it. We don't know the art, but it's fantastic. You know, the pottery, the basket, chinas, the jewelry, all that stuff. That is true brilliance. That, you know.
And again, that for so long was just pushed off as ethnographic.
Arts and crafts.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, arts and crafts.
I mean, and that's the kind of thing where you realize that the critics, the historians, they failed us, because again, not only did they jam the artist and jam the culture, all of the people who could have enjoyed that material and should have seen that hanging along with Cezanne at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, we've all been robbed of that.
Yeah.
You know,
they're slowly coming to the realization. I mean,
right.
the Picasso show not too long ago with all the African pieces next to it, you know, to show his influence. And I did a show of Joseph Alber's work with Native American rugs, blankets, and things to show that influence. And
that's one of the extra confounding things, because the artists knew it. The artists.
Oh yeah, for sure. Albert knew it. Picasso.
Jackson Pollock's drip paintings are sand paintings. You know, they're Navajo sand paintings.
Yeah, of course.
But that story was very carefully omitted. Jackson Pollock became this genius who just descended upon us and created this drip painting just poof out of nowhere. I mean, the Western culture and, you know, our you know, American civilization loves the idea of the singular genius working alone without any sort of influences, and just he has these magical Galileo, Einstein, Beethoven moments of divine inspiration, and it just comes to him. It's always a him, it's always a white guy out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Total poppycock. Everyone is in. The only people who aren't influenced are the self-taught artists. It's Bill Traylor, or, you know, people like that who, you know, had no connection to the art world whatsoever.
Yeah.
Jackson Pollock was walking around New York for years before of course he was influenced by everybody.
He lived in Arizona in 22. He was in Arizona. You know, the sand paintings, the one in the San Francisco Modern Art is, you know, it's a sand painting. You know, and I even told the director there, I said, that's a sand painting. I can, you know, I see it as a sand painting. You know, that's a yay, but yay, that's a, you know, and they're like, oh,
it doesn't make him any less of an artist. It doesn't make
maybe more of an artist, because he wasn't afraid to use indigenous, native inspiration and say, okay, there's something there that I can take away.
Yeah. So what, and again, and I was reading an art history book, you know, trying to learn, and I got about 200 pages in, and there was a painting and an explanation on every page. It was really a beautiful book. purchased at the Met by Gretchen Green, this gallerist in Breckenridge, who then, you know, gave it to me as a gift because she was done with it, and I loved it. I got 200 pages in, and I was like, has there been a woman here yet? Like there might have been one O'Keefe. You know, has there been a black person here yet? No. And it's like, now this is a PhD. Okay, and this book was written in like 2005.
Yeah.
What I realized is that this person is not ignorant or unaware. This person is going out of his way to exclude these people. He's going out of his way to manufacture a story of art history that is inaccurate.
Yeah.
That book, fortunately, could never be published today. It'd be laughed off the market. But we're only talking 10, 15 years ago. So, you know, it's a shame for so many of these artists and all of these millions of people in these audiences who have been deprived of that work.
Yeah, well, it's changing. I mean, you have the Baltimore Art Museum that for the next year, they're only buying women artists' work, right? So, I mean, there are things, I think, and people are recognizing that art is not good, is not deemed to be the best just because of your sex or race, you know, or ethnicity.
Or what you get on the marketplace. You know, again, the market, you know,
it's starting though. Look at a Mark Black, you know,
Jeff Koons. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but is he great because he can get $100 million for a balloon dog, you know, sculpture?
Right.
We need to divest ourselves of that thinking dramatically. And, you know, as much as it is changing, and it has so far to go.
Oh yeah.
You know, these museums who, you know, were struggling with attendance before COVID, and they wonder why, you know, no one wants to come. Well, there's not a single painting of a black person by a black person in this museum. Why would that person come in here? You are telling them you don't matter.
Yeah.
You're telling them that your culture, your artwork, your maker, you know, if you go into an art museum and you didn't see anyone who looked anything like you or had any of your background, this place isn't for me.
Yeah.
And it's astonishing, the lack of diversity in these collections.
Yeah. Well, they're trying. Some are. Tucson Museum of Art is really trying to do that kind of thing from a cultural standpoint, that they want to reach out to, especially the Hispanic community. It's more than 50% of our community, and they've just opened a wing that's just related to, you know, Spanish art, ancient and current. So, you know, that would be a good story as well.
And there are, the Mint Museum in Charlotte. I was able to go there in 2019. They had, it was so evenly balanced. You know, I was looking at the tags like, oh, there's a lot of women in here. It was noticeable that it was almost 50-50. High Museum of Art in Atlanta, its contemporary collection has a lot of women, a lot of black artists. So yeah, I think it is getting better. I think there's an awareness of it, but you know, when you talk about the Met or MoMA or the Art Institute of Chicago, the real pillars of like the culture, those are massive institutions that are really hard to turn, and they've got so much momentum going in that direction. You know, it takes years to stop and really readdress and say, how did we not see this for so long?
Yeah, well, that's your job now.
Yeah.
Let us all know. And I have a question before we end this up. So what would your recommendation be to somebody who's like you? You're into this full bore for 4 years now. You're clearly trying to make it as a go in the art world and making a big pivot. What would you say to somebody who's maybe sitting in your footsteps, but they're in 2016, where you are, and now it's 2020?
Yeah, get all your social channels and brand them, and start putting out content at least there daily. Things you see, pictures, stuff you like, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube at the very least. Probably TikTok would be a good way to go for a lot of folks, especially if you're younger. But just put out snippets and share articles and start getting into that world, start becoming a part of it, brand it probably around, make sure all of your handles are similar, whether it's your name or, a web address or some sort of philosophy. I'm here to see the art, or arts writer or something. Get it uniform across all of those and search until you can find one that you can use all the way across them. There are any number of, WordPress is really cheap and easy to use to build a little bit of a website. If you don't have that skill, I don't even think a website is all that essential now. But where it really does help is to start getting some clips and getting some examples of work that you can send people. It's great for practice. I can assure you that whatever time you spend learning WordPress, how to build websites, any little bit of coding, you will never regret that. You will never regret that. And then, the look for these smaller publications. If someone was really interested in writing about art and reached out to me and said, hey, could I write some articles for cgradeart.art? Sure, be my guest. I'm not going to be able to pay you anything because I don't get paid anything for this, but it gets your foot in the door. It might get you to a gallery opening or reception or a media preview at a museum, and then all of a sudden you can meet people and start making connections. There are all kinds of local newspaper culture, kind of counterculture, free, pick them up at the pizza shop sort of places. Those folks are always looking for writers. Again, the pay is going to be nothing or minimal, but you can say, hey, I wrote for, Tucson Alt Weekly about this show, or I wrote for Void magazine in Jacksonville about that show, and just offer to write. You've got to have some sort of writing talent or background, I guess, but we're talking about people who are wanting to be in the media. So whatever that is of yours that you think is your best skill, whether it's writing or video, or I wish I could do more video production, but I can't. So my stand-ups that I do on the C Grade Art YouTube channel, that's one take, and if I flub up, well, I'm just going to keep going. But maybe it's
sounds like mine.
Maybe it's a podcast, whatever it happens to be. Someone explained this very well to me a long time ago. You want to find that intersection of your greatest passion and your greatest talent. And for me, my greatest passion right now is art, and my greatest talent right now is writing. So that's what I try and focus on. Maybe for someone else who wants to maybe it is sales. Maybe it's working in a gallery and doing sales. Maybe it's doing frames. Maybe, whatever that is that your talent is, figure out how that can intersect with the art. I'll guarantee you this. If you're really sociable and like lively and outgoing and love talking to people and doing sales, museums would love to have you as someone in their endowment, department to reach out to donors, and donor relations is huge for writing. And this is something I'm talking to different people about. Gallery writing press releases. Right. I think marketing is huge. Before COVID, boy, these museums and galleries and developers who were putting a major sculptural piece outside of their new towers would bring art writers in on press trips, all expenses paid, to write about that sort of thing. Developers have a lot of money, and some of them have art collections, and they want to tell those stories. Hotel brands, there are a lot of hotel brands focused on their art collections. They need people to write press releases and do marketing and host press trips. And there are opportunities. It's not easy. There are a lot of people looking for those sort of things. COVID has been devastating on the industry. Just from I can tell. I haven't gotten. I was turning down as many press trips last year as those I took. I had to turn down a trip to the Venice Biennale from Swatch because I had already booked something. I had to turn down a trip to the Azores because I couldn't make it, to Long Island to see a show about Helen Frankenthal. I didn't have time. I still had a day job. I couldn't like just travel, but that shows you how much money these hotels and brands were willing to spend. You know, that has gone away. I haven't been invited on a press trip since March and don't expect to be for some, and that's fine. But that is just one representation of how this job market, art market has dried up a little bit. You know, all of the curator positions, the front of house positions, you know, I think, you know, being a docent, you know, if you're retired and you don't absolutely need the money, I mean, that's a great way to get a foot in the door at a museum. I saw on Facebook the booth was going through another round of docent training. I'd love to be a docent. You know, I can't take my Tuesdays and Wednesdays off from the day job and just work for free telling someone about, you know, Thomas Hart Benton paintings as much as I'd like to. But, you know, if you don't have to like make money right now, that's a great way to get your, for your college student. Oh God, go work at the gift shop at your museum. You know, just be around the people who are doing what you want to do. I think that's generally in life good advice as well. Intern at a gallery, be willing to do deliveries or sweep the floor, or when they have, you know, art walk, pour wine, or whatever it happens to be. I think, you know, people always ask me, you know, how do you get into rate? Because, you know, I had one dream job for a lot of people. I talked about sports. You know, my whole job was going to games and talking about sports. And, oh, how'd you get that job? Well, you know, the first thing I do is tell people, play quarterback in the NFL for 10 years. You can have any job you want. Short of that, you know, if you're passionate enough about sports, you'll figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
They're like the art. There's no like direct pathway to this. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could go get your you know, art history degree and then go get a master's and then go, you know, spend $10,000 at the, you know, Christie's Institute in London for 6 months. And yeah, I'd love to have that education, and that will lead you into the art world. But if you want this badly enough and you're interested in it enough and you're willing to spend the time, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You'll figure something out.
I have one final question for you. Did you watch Game 6 last night of the World Series? That tells me that's it. Yeah, you were reading an art. You were reading an art book, weren't you?
I was probably writing about art. I haven't watched a game in years.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah. I didn't watch it either. Yeah,
and there was a time when I wouldn't have missed it. You know,
I was writing as well. Actually, I was working on my next book. So yeah. Well, Chad, it's been a pleasure having you.
I've enjoyed it. When I started listening to this podcast years ago, I thought, oh man, wouldn't that be fun to be on that podcast sometime? Not like it was a goal or anything I set. And you know, back in the days when you had everyone come out there to Tucson, I was like, I should just go out there sometime and tell Mark I'm going to be out there and would love to come by. But I've been looking forward to this all week. Every episode I listen to as soon as it comes out. So it's really been a pleasure. And again, any of your folks who are watching or listening, you can find me at cgreatart at Gmail. Drop me a line if you've got any work you could use a writer for. And continued success to you. And I appreciate the support and wind in my sails you've given me.
Yeah, well, you're important to our community. You really are. And you're a fresh voice, which I love. You're a talented writer. Yeah, you're exactly what we want to see come into this. And you're young, and we want to see you come into our world, especially the Western and Native art worlds. I think we need advocates like yourself to be able to do that, and you clearly are. And you're going to succeed. I have no doubt. And maybe someday, you know, when you're big and famous, you'll mention my name and go, oh yeah, Mark Sublette, he said I should do this thing. You know, they'll go, who's that? Oh, he's an old time dealer. He's not around anymore, but he did have a pretty good gallery once upon a time.
I can't wait to come out and see it. That's when all of this opens up again. I will love to see the gallery and spend some more time with you.
I'll let you know when I have that Nieto, and you'll have to come out and see it.
Better believe it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Chad. Very good. we'll look for you, and I'll look for your writings, and we'll see you on Essential West magazine as well.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks. We need your support for the Medicine Man Gallery channel, so make sure to click the subscribe button and tap the little bell icon to be notified when we upload a new video, which we do every morning on Wednesday and Friday. See you soon.